welcome back to the floor. So today we are going to be looking at my 2021 F3 here. There's a few things I'm curious about. It looks like they've changed some of the covers, and basically what we're going to do is pull a bunch of the plastics off, take a look around in here, see what's going on, and also the rear caster anti-flutter assemblies. I want to take a look at those and see if they went back to the O-ring dampeners or if they still use a clutch mechanism or exactly what's going on. So basically, we're just going to tear the covers off this thing, have a look around, and see what there is to see. So I suppose to make my life easier, we will turn off the brakes on this thing so I can sort of push it around. By the way, I have made the stealth mode mods on this thing already, so we can turn off the brakes and still move the thing around. Yeah, like I said in my initial video, there's definitely a lot more plastic on here than there used to be. But anyways, let's start in the front here and take a look at what the ICS mounting looks like. Huh, well that's interesting. I don't think I noticed this before. The front cover on this now is a lot smaller and flat. On the previous chairs, it used to extend out, I believe it came past the edge of these motors, but you can see here we've got a pretty decent amount of space. I think it was 2018 or maybe 2019 when they did their refresh. I know they mentioned that they mounted the ICS module vertically, but yeah, I didn't quite notice that this cover was so much more flat and further set back than it was previously. So let's pull our thumb screws off of here. I'm assuming that taking this thing apart is going to be just about the same as it was before. Previously, these covers had a couple of little hooks down here, and you just sort of grab the front of it and pull it forward and up. There we go. Yeah, so that's just a basic plastic tub now. Interesting. Yeah, so we've still got the two little plastic hooks here on the bottom. So you got to be careful with these. This chair doesn't have the easy lock on the bottom of it. When you have an easy lock, the anti-rotation bar sticks out here in the front, and it makes those latches a little bit more difficult to remove. If I zoom in here, you can see the two little holes that those catches hook onto, which are these two guys right here. So let me turn the chair off. And yeah, as you can see, our ICS module is now mounted vertically. If I recall, these just kind of fold down. Yeah, there we go. So all the wiring is just sort of stuffed in here. So gotta be careful not to pinch anything. But yeah, it looks like we've got 3 RNet bus cables plugged in here. And then this cable right here goes back to the Connect module. This is what gives it access to the ICS and some of the data and whatnot. So the Connect module, actually, it's this wire here. There's one RNet cable, and then there's this one. And they go into this little box right here. And then it turns into a single cable, and that runs all the way to the back of the chair. But we'll take a look at that in a little bit. I'm curious if they have different mounting for that Connect module or whatnot than they used to. Let me pull this ICS box out of here and see what we're looking at. So chair's off. I'm just going to unplug all of these RNet cables. And the nice thing with RNet and also the ICS stuff is it doesn't matter which port you use. So unplugging all this and then putting it back in really doesn't matter. Same with the ICS cables. These little flat 3-pin connectors, those can go into any port on the module itself. Oh, it looks like our light wiring is hard mounted in here. So if I try and slide this out, that's probably still going to be connected. So there's a little bit of a kind of a latch here on the top that goes over part of this cover. So if you just kind of lift up on that, we should be able to carefully pull the module out of here, keeping in mind that our light wiring is still connected. There we go. And this cover will kind of come off of here. Oh, yeah. So we have some changes with the ICS module. Now I figured because the the lights in the back have sort of an animation effect, that there had to be a little bit more intelligence for the lighting controls. And you can tell here, see this extra board that goes around the top? That's the lighting control interface. So it looks like, do they still have labels on here? Yeah, so it's still got the same like labels and connectors as the older versions of the ICS had on here. But I believe this board just plugs into the top of them. Anyways, I'm going to take some photos of this and I'll put them up on the website, brokenwheelchairs.com. There's a link down below for that. But I'm really curious to dig into this a little bit more. It looks like this board is in fact screwed down in here. There's a little sticker on here that keeps this from coming unplugged easily. Let me grab my knife. We'll just carefully peel this off of here so we can unplug this connector. There we go. Yeah, so there you can see a little bit better. We've got this extra board on here. And I get the feeling that this board just plugs into those existing connectors that were down there. And I'm assuming there's a little bit of logic or something on the back side of this board. Looks like most everything in here is now conformally coated too. So if we look down in here real close, see how all this looks like it's shiny? That's conformal coating to deal with any sort of liquid that gets on here. This is the firmware board here. This is the version of the ICS module on this. This just unplugs. It's on some little standoff pins. But yeah, as you can see here, most everything is conformally coated. You can see right here where the conformal coating ends, but that basically just keeps water from coming into contact with this board at all. Interesting. We're going to set that aside for the time being and continue looking at stuff in here. And it would appear as though I've got the actual Permobil Volt Pro batteries in here. You can see a Permobil logo sticking out. But everything else looks pretty much similar. We've got the shocks here in the front. We've got these little plastic channels on the sides here that allow cables to run to the back of the chair. There's one of those on each side. Yeah, let me spin this thing around and we'll take a look under the back cover. So I believe these should be the same as before, where you just kind of grab the back of this and yeah, it should just slide off. Interesting note though, these little color accents, wow, yeah, see how easily those come off? I'm gonna have to put some 3M mounting tape or something on there to hold this on. They just have these little, plastic springy standoffs, and they go into these rubber grommets here. So this stuff is going to come off pretty easily. Okay, back cover is still held up by this one. So if you grab this, you can sort of wiggle it out of here. We've got these little slots here, and those have to get past the rubber right here. So that's what makes that a little bit tricky to pull out. So you can see we've got a little hook on the back right here. And when you put that in, it goes through this little hole on the back cover, and that's what holds this thing up, along with this Velcro, or industrial hook and loop tape, which I think, yeah, you can hear that click into place there. So let's go ahead and pull this down. So we've got our rear light assemblies here. There's a little connector that looks like it should come off. Oh, these are mounted to flex cables. You got to be really careful with these. Here, let me set the camera down. Yeah, so these lights are mounted with flex cables now. So you got to be super careful not to tear these. Let's see if we can get this off of here. There we go. And this should just kind of lift up and out of here. There's some plastic hooks here on the side that go around the rear suspension arms. So you just kind of grab this and gently but firmly pull, and those will come off. There we go. So here's our back cover, and as you can see, there's flex cable between both of these lights. And this, yeah, that's like an aluminum housing on the back of the lights here. I'm assuming that that's going to be like some sort of heat sink. What kind of screws did they use? Yeah, so these are kind of like a Torx or some sort of security screw or something. Well, regardless, we'll set this aside, and we're going to take apart those lights here in a little bit because I want to know how those work. I'm sure they've got a few different cobs in there because there's amber and red lights. So back of the chair, we've got our breaker right here. This is the connect module, and in the past this was just kind of velcroed on here with a foam block. Yeah, so there's a foam block that sticks to the back of the chair, and there's some more of that industrial hook and loop tape. Only thing is that the adhesive on this foam is a lot less strong than that Velcro stuff is. So if you try to disconnect that, it's just going to rip the foam block off of there. So if you want to remove this, it's probably best to stick a flat blade screwdriver or something down in here, like maybe your fingers. Yeah, it's going to pull off. But you got to stick something down in there to separate that. But yeah, this is our Connect module here. So this has the GPS antenna, the LTE SIM card, and also I believe there is a secondary Bluetooth radio in here that is independent of the one built into the joystick for like mouse control and stuff like that. But typical setup here, we've got our 120 amp controller, and then our battery connections, we've got our motor connections. These wires, I don't know, they look a little bit smaller than previous ones that go out to the motors, but it seems like a much higher quality cable. It feels like a silicone actually. And we've got some little ferrite chokes on here too, so that's new. Then our little tiny brake wires here. Let me see if I can zoom in on that. So we've got our two brake wires here, which are really tiny, and then there's the two slightly larger ones. And these go out to the motors, and there's a connector here for the brakes, so you can unplug that as well. But yeah, it looks like everything on the back of these chairs is pretty much the same. They've just got the lighting kit looks a little different, and we've got these plastic. Yeah, these are held on the same way. Just those little standoffs with rubber grommets. See, here's the other thing too with these. Since these are just kind of stuck on here, you get a lot of dirt and stuff underneath here as well. So I'm gonna have to do some checking, but I think what I'm gonna wind up doing is getting some 3M mounting tape and attaching these down, and then maybe also running some black hot glue or something to kind of seal this off. Because if you're running around, water is going to get sprayed up off these back casters, and it's going to get down inside here. Granted, it's all plastic, so it's not going to rust or anything, but I would like to kind of seal that up a little bit. Yeah, I'll play around with that later on. But yeah, let's pull this Connect module off of here, and I'll kind of show you what that looks like. So I'm just going to stick a flat blade in here behind this hook and loop tape and sort of work this off of here so we don't, there we go, don't pop that foam off. So we've got here the Antenova, and I'll have to look it up, but I think that's the antenna for the LTE modem. Then we've got our, actually here, I'm going to look at this for a few minutes and make sure I'm saying things correctly. I'll be right back. All right, interesting stuff. I pulled the Connect module out and got to looking around, pulled some numbers, and yeah. So this thing operates on the Telia or Telia carrier. I don't know what to call it. It's sort of an IoT, LTE data-only service provider. Apparently they're based in Sweden, go figure, and they own a whole bunch of fiber. They've expanded into the US recently, but the SIM card that is in this thing is a Telia SIM card. More research is required. It looks like, near as I can tell, it's running on the 800 megahertz band, but apparently there's a few other frequencies as well. But anyways, I'm gonna do some more research on that and see if maybe I can get a hold of them. I'm just curious what a coverage map would look like for that company, but since it's not a consumer cellular and voice network, you can't really find coverage maps. And I'm also curious if they're operating as an MVNO and if they are using other people's towers. But anyways, Telia, that's who it is. So right here, we've got our Sierra wireless modem, and the SIM card on the back connects to that. This Antenova antenna here handles the GPS and LTE connectivity. The GPS is handled directly by the Sierra wireless modem. Over here, this antenna is for Bluetooth. This particular antenna is made by Molex, It's hard to tell what's going on under this can here, but near as I could tell, this thing is capable of Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and RFID and a few other things. I'm pretty sure in this application it's being used as a Bluetooth radio because I don't see any other evidence of Bluetooth on this board. But anyways, that's where we're at for now. Interesting little module. I'm going to have to do some more research on this thing. But I'm going to put the thing back together in its case and get it stuck back in the chair for now. And then we're going to continue on looking at things. I think we'll pull apart these LED light modules next. One thing I do want to mention about this module though, it is not water resistant at all. There is no conformal coating or anything. It's in this little case, which should help a little bit, but the end is kind of open. They've just got a zip tie here that holds the cable in place for strain relief, which is fine. But this is tucked up high enough in the back of the chair that it really shouldn't be an issue, but just an interesting note. Let's see if I can get this back on here. There we go. Got our hook and loop tape back in. It's interesting though that it's sort of mounted on this foam, which gives it a little bit of bounciness. So as you're running around in your chair, this thing shouldn't really bang into anything. On the back here, it's sitting against this wire. Well, it's like a rubber pass-through ferrule wire thing for the battery cable. So this thing's kind of insulated, so as your chair bounces around, it's not going to like damage anything in there. Let's have a look at our LED lights on this thing. Kind of curious what's going on in here. They look like some pretty nice units with the heat sinking and aluminum and all that. Oh, I'm gonna have to grab my security screwdriver set. There's some weird bits holding this together. Hang on, I'll be right back. Turns out they were just really small Torx bits. I'm just gonna pull off this one here on the left and fold it back. We've got a little plastic flex board retention clip there, and I don't want to try and pull that off because this stuff will damage really easy. So let's take a look and see what we got here. Oh, looky there. Yeah, so we've got a flexible PCB, and it looks like we've got some little dual color LEDs maybe. Let's see here, I'm just looking at the traces on this board. Yeah, we've got one different one down here on the end. Huh. Well, I'm going to have to power this thing back up once we get the chair back together and take a look at what's going on there. Oh, we've got part numbers. 335079E. I'm going to look that up real quick. So these part numbers don't cross to anything on the internet. I did notice though that there's the same prefix on this flex cable down here for this part number. So I'm thinking that might potentially be Permobil part numbers. Although it is interesting that they're actually embossed into the back of the aluminum housing. But then again, I don't think these are off-the-shelf parts. These are very clearly made to fit the back of this housing. So this, I'm sure, is something that Permobil had spun up by a manufacturer, because I can't see any other application for this setup with these tabs and everything. So I would bet that's like their own internal numbers. And we have this other logo down here that has a 20 on it. I don't know what that means, but anyways, there you go. Yep, I'll bet money now that those are Permobil part numbers, because this little daughter board down here has the same prefix on it. Let's pull this out and see what it looks like. Now, if I'm correct, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a row of connectors down here. They used amp connectors previously, so let's see here if we can very carefully remove this. Oh, it plugs in right there. I can see now. So these are our normal lighting connectors, and there's that center one there. All these lighting connectors are pretty much duplicated, so you kind of have your choice as to which one you want to use. What's going on here? Let's see, is this thing glued in or something? It doesn't want to... Oh, there we go. Ah, yep. So we got all kinds of logic on here. That's interesting, though. Underneath, oh, we've got a couple of plastic standoffs in here. So yeah, we've got our standard ICS board down here. We've got the little MOSFETs that control the lighting. We've got the normal pins, or headers. Oh, look at this! So, I don't know if you remember a long time ago when I made the schematic for these lights. I was using these OSEPP, or I I forget what model they were, but these connectors, they've changed it. If you look real close here, see how there's a little hole right here? So those connectors previously were the same height as this one. See how these are taller now? So that is the same connector that I sourced. I think it's on the website. It's a DigiKey part. But yeah, if you were to use that with this newer ICS, those connectors would clip right down in here, and we have the little retention slot for that latch. Previously, that latch had to be sliced off. Interesting. I suppose if you had one of these newer chairs and you didn't have the light kit on it, I don't know if this board is going to be inside the ICS module or not. I would assume maybe not. I'm loosely basing that on nothing, but regardless, even if this is in here, you could pull this out, set it to the side, and still use these connectors to wire in your own lights. We do have a couple other really long pins over here. I think those... Oh yeah, so these are where some ICS seating connectors used to be. See how we have 3 pins there? And they've added a jumper. Let's see if I can light this up so you can see it. Yeah, see how they've added a jumper there? So that board, that little daughter board, is being powered by these 2 pins. And then the signals come in from the chair here into this board. And then that tells this board which lights are supposed to be turned on and off. Interesting. Yeah, because with the new animated lights and everything, it makes sense that we've got to have a little bit more logic in there. Huh, well there you go. It's the same underlying ICS module, although this one, conformal coating, as you can see all that shininess down there? It's really nice to see that. Previously, only this board had the conformal coating on it. This, let's see here. This just sits on a row of pins that comes out. There's no reason you should ever remove this. But if you look at the back here, you can see we're running version 3.9 of the ICS. And yeah, completely conformally coated, which is great. I'm going to put that back in here. By the way, don't remove this little firmware board. It's not a good idea. And you can... It won't brick your chair, but what will happen is if this thing gets screwed up, your ICS module will never turn off. So when you turn off your chair, the seating lights will stay on. That is what happened with the test bench. I was playing around and I forgot to unhook the power from the module. I ripped this thing out of there, put it back in, and now on that particular module on the test bench, it's on all the time. Yeah, it's interesting to see the evolution of things. The original old school ICS modules, the board ended right here. And these connectors were stacked in here. You can see the old positions where they used to be. And instead of having actual RNet connectors, they used the 4 of these, and they had an RNet to 3-pin ICS bus cable adapter that they used. But in later versions, they added on this little wing with extra connectors down here, which saves a little bit of wiring, and also, if you're not using connectors with adapters, you get a little bit more... the cables are connected better. They're not going to come apart. The more connection points you have, obviously, the more points you have for problems or things not working correctly. But anyways, I'm going to pull this out of here the rest of the way, get some photos of everything, and then we're going to put this all back together and take a look around the chair a little bit more.
Well, bear with me. I think we got some hail going on out there.
But I've gotten the ICS module put back in here, and I was just taking a look here at our tilt actuator. This is all very nicely machined stuff. I mean, we got some aluminum or steel or something down here. This motor is, I don't know, I'm just kind of a geek when it comes to products that are machined and done up nice and look presentable and everything. Our wiring down here is, I don't know, it's all kind of jammed in there as per usual. Permobil's been doing that for quite some time, but I don't know, it would be nice to see a method of attaching some of this cabling that's not just kind of everywhere in here, but seems to work good enough for now.
If you've ever noticed on the back of your chair in a dark room that there's green lights illuminating, that would be this Connect module. There's a hole in this back cover right here where you can reach through to get to the breaker. And when that light's on, you can see that it shines right through this hole. So if you've ever seen random lights or blinking lights or anything on the back of your chair, that's this guy here. It turns on solid green apparently when it first fires up, and then it turns off. Some circumstances it'll be blinking. I don't know if that means error codes or what, but anyways, just so you know, that's what where that light's coming from. Okay, let's plug in this guy real quick and see what our LEDs look like. Trying not to scratch this, just lay it on the concrete floor there. Let's turn on our headlights and see what's going on. You can see the headlights are on up there.
And let's have a peek inside here. Okay, I've tuned our exposure way down. You can see this is just the running lights here. Let me turn on the turn signals and see what happens. Interesting, so that different looking LED on the end is just a very solid burning amber light that looks a lot brighter than the rest of them. So that one comes on and that gives you your really bright turn signal, and then it scans through the rest. It's a lot brighter than it is. I just kind of lowered the exposure on the camera a little bit so you could see it. But you can tell that this one is significantly brighter than the rest. And then when we turn the when we turn the turn signals back off, our taillights fade on. And turn the headlights off, and they fade out. Interesting. I like it.
I got to looking around here and I wanted to take a peek at the motors, so I pulled this off. This guy is held in with, looks like 4 plastic standoffs and a piece of Velcro. That's just normal Velcro there, which attaches to the fender. Wait, what's going on here? Did that break? These plastic standoffs seem to be a little bit more substantial than the old ones. They have little inserts that go inside of them to kind of hold them in place. You can see here the insert pulled out on this one. You can kind of see how there's space in there as compared to this one here. And that little piece is still in there. I probably didn't pull this apart in the correct method, but anyways, I'm gonna see if I can get this side cover off. It looks like our motors here are a little bit different. I mean, well, I can't really tell. They have one of these panel clips that hold this bottom section on, but it's still pretty firmly attached. And I got to looking down in here, there's a bunch more of these rubber grommet style things. And to be honest, I'm not gonna take this apart because it looks like doing that is potentially gonna damage something or rip those plastic standoffs off. Apparently there is not a service manual that's available yet for the newer version of these chairs. I'm not quite sure what the procedure is. And after pulling this panel off and seeing this little piece that came apart, like, I don't think it broke or anything. Let's see if we can get this out of here. Yeah, that's one of those plugs that goes inside here. Yeah, that just goes in there like that. Anyway, since this is a brand new chair and these plastic things, I mean, it's not just limited to this Permobil chair. I worked in automotive shops and stuff for years, and this type of thing just is not designed to come apart multiple times. And that's why we had a parts department at the dealership, is they say usually the parts won't break. But if they do, that's why we have the parts department. And I think that's kind of some of the assembly and build it techniques we've got with all these plastics, so I'm not going to take that apart. I thought at first maybe the motors look different, but these look like very similar to the old 2-pole motors that they've been using for a while. These do have significantly more torque though than my 2016 F3 had, or 2017, I forget what year it was. And we've got a little housing here over the top of the brakes, which interestingly enough, this little plastic housing, while it does protect the brake mechanism, it kind of turns into a little echo chamber. Not as much on this chair, but in the M3, these things are up front because the motors are mounted the other way. The brakes are significantly louder than the older M3s because the front cover plastics sort of integrate this into it and it makes a little echo chamber. And yeah, I mean, that is what it is, I guess, but just another side note. Again, I'm not complaining about anything on this chair. I'm just kind of noticing stuff as we go along here. Oh, speaking of which, let's remove these and see what's going on here. I want to see if there's O-rings or what in there. Actually, I'm going to put the rest of it back together first, then we're going to take a look at these. Something else I noticed as I'm putting this panel back on here, you can't just shove this in here. You got to put your finger around on the back of these grommets as you push the little plastic plungers through them.
Otherwise, they will just go right through and the grommets will pop through the plastic on the other side. So you got to kind of hold them on the back as you push that through. Then they sort of click into place. Then we can get our Velcro set here. Might have to add another piece of Velcro or something down here on this fender. Again, I'm a much bigger fan of more industrial design and less plastics and all that. That's just personal preference, but things to think about when you're working on these. These panels, I don't think, unless I'm doing something completely wrong, but just from my experience with this type of panel attachment method in the automotive industry anyways, this stuff tends to break if you take it on and off too many times, even if you're doing it properly. Again, I'm glad to have the chair. I'm not upset with it, just things I'm noticing. I just put this little trim piece on the back here and I was noticing something. So we have these little grommets with the plastic standoffs that come through. I was just realizing you could stick something in the center of these to hold these little legs out, and it would very much hold these in place a lot better. Yeah, if I put some little tiny screws down in here, it would kind of bite into that and force those things out, which would keep them from falling off as much. Focus. Actually, I think that would work with this cover as well. Yeah, we've got the same arrangement here. Huh. I think I'm still going to use double-sided tape because this thing just comes off so easily. But interesting note, if you got some little machine screws, not self-tappers, just like ones if you were, I don't know, taking apart your wireless router, just those little types of screws, and put them down in here. Once this thing's on here, I think it would hold those in place a lot better. Interesting. Putting our back panel on here. I'm just noticing again, we don't have really any weather protection at all back here. There's this giant hole here so you can reach up and get to the breaker, but we just got all these wires that are just basically hanging out. Granted, there is another cover that goes over the top of this, and when this thing goes up like this, hang on, let me make sure those wires aren't getting pinched. There we go. But just with the spray coming up off the back wheels, it seems like, yeah, I mean, I can get my finger through that gap on the bottom there, and obviously right here. And our wiring connector is like right up here. I don't know. I think it would be doable to put a little bit more weather resistance on these. Obviously, you're not going to want to drive through puddles and all that stuff, but it'd just be nice to see some more shielding or maybe tighter fitting parts or weather stripping or something. I don't know. Obviously, that'll cost money to do, but on a $37,000 thing, just little things I would expect to see. Okay, partial retraction on what I just said. Just for one thing. We do have a little rubber grommet right here on this battery cable. I think that's mostly to protect it electrically. So, oh yeah. So check it out. So this is our main battery cable going into the breaker right here. And we have this big aluminum thing, which is our lights on the back. So I think they added this grommet here because a lot of times you strip back a little bit of extra wire on these and they go into the breaker. But regardless, you end up with a little bit of wire where the conductor is exposed and the sheathing has been trimmed back a little bit, or the insulation. And since that's so close right there, I'm guessing that's why they put that on. And yeah, they've got it on the other side there as well. Okay, well, I retract my retraction. That's not for weather sealing, that's to keep things from shorting out. By the way, this chair has maybe 20, 30 miles on it so far. I haven't cleaned it yet. I haven't been running around in the dirt, but just on some roads and stuff. Yeah, here's what I'm talking about with these plastics. These just kind of sit on here. Whatever. I'll fix that later. Okay, let's have a look at our caster anti-flutter system, or whatever's going on in these things. You just stick a flat blade in here and pry up, and these little covers come right off. Just the traditional little plasticky things. Yeah, it kind of looks like we've got some O-rings or something. I don't see the clutch mechanism that they used to run in here. Well, let me get that Allen bolt out of there and let's see what's going on.
The investigation continues. I threw the jack into this thing. Oop, we got a little spring washer. So here's our slightly out of round machine surface here. This looks like a cast part, so it looks like they cast this arm and then surface ground it to be flat. That's why we've got this little warp right there or whatever.
Can you guys see anything interesting up in there? It looks just like bearings to me. I'm gonna see if I can get this thing out.
Whatever it is, it seems to have some give to it, like maybe there's some more spring washers in there. Holy spring washers, Batman. Look at this. Is this going to explode when I take it out of here? Look at that. There is an insane stack of spring washers. Yeah, so the other side is just a spring washer and a bearing. Then this little collar goes in the middle. And then, I don't know what the heck's going on here, but... Aha! There is an O-ring. So this is all lightly oiled. Whoop, so I throw it on the ground. Interesting. So we've got an O-ring on the bottom, and then a whole bunch of spring washers. How the heck does this work? Oh, it says on the top, 12 PCS, or 12 pieces. Does that mean there's 12 of these in here? What if this is going to explode in my hand? I think this bottom piece right here, this, I think, is press fit on that collar. And then the whole thing seems to be a little bit squishable. Yeah, see if you look right here. So that is apparently applying tension. Oh, okay, so this piece here, these two pieces rotate independently. And then we've got our friction set by this O-ring. So the tighter this is, the more spring clamping force is going to be pushing down on it. So this is kind of a bearing surface, but not really. Okay, so I guess our O-ring is providing the anti-flutter friction, and then the amount of clamp that we have on this translates into this not slipping as much, which in effect gives you more tension. I wonder if this is adjustable. Okay, so that bolt tightens down all the way to the shoulder. So turning this bolt does not adjust your tension. That just holds this entire assembly. By the way, there is another bearing in here. It's just not in the stack. It's just not in the stack currently. But it looks like our tension is roughly preset on this. So to adjust it, you would have to add another spacer or something maybe. I'm going to stick the other bearing onto this stack and see what exactly is going on here. Okay, that bearing rides on the outside surface. Then we've got this spacer here in the middle. And there's a tiny bit of inset right there. So I think that is what's going to provide our clamping. See, the problem is I'm having a bunch of caster flutter right now. And I think it's because I'm using these giant F5 caster wheels. Now, I did order it directly from Permobil this way with these tires. So I don't know if that means we need a different one of these clutch packs. I might have to ask the rep about that. So let's tighten this down. Yeah, you can see it's putting load on those. Okay, so that's all the way tight. I can turn it by hand, but it takes a pretty decent amount of resistance. I'm going to send a text message to my contact at Permobil, and I'm going to see if there's a different set of these spring washer clutch arrangements that is supposed to be on the F5 versus the F3. Because it's interesting that this is stamped on the front. It says 12 pieces, because I'm definitely not getting enough friction on this setup for these giant caster wheels. There you can see. Well, that's interesting. Huh. Well, let's put it back together. Well, I got the thing put back together. I sent a text to the guy. I kind of forgot it was Sunday. Sorry if you're watching. Didn't mean to bother you on a Sunday. But I'm thinking I might be able to add a second spring washer down here to bump that stem up further. Wait, no, that wouldn't work because we still have the same amount of bolt on there. Well, anyways, the scientific method for adjusting the amount of tension on these things, basically you just take the wheel and you give it a flip, and it should go 3/4 of a turn around. If it goes a full turn or more before it stops, the tension's not tight enough. Allow me to show you. So that goes almost all the way around. Now you might be wondering, how is that a proper test? Because you can push it at different speeds and obviously it'll go different amounts. But the thing is, the way that clutch works and the way this weighs, if you push it really hard, it's not going to be that much different. It's hard to explain. There's kind of a feel to it, kind of like when you're tightening bolts on a vehicle and you can tell how tight it is. I don't know, just based on my experience, I can tell that that's not quite enough tension. With this amount of force, it shouldn't float at all after I push on it. So anyways, I'll find out more about that. Interesting that they have made some changes though. I like the concept of that. I think the problem is potentially that I just have ginormous casters on here that were not designed with that amount of spring tension. Again, loosely basing that on nothing, but just kind of my thoughts. Come back here. Okay, well, I'm going to put this thing back on the floor and see if there's anything else we need to look at. All right, so I think that covers most of the things I wanted to look at on the chair. Side note, I did get a text back. It turns out on the F5, they do have a different clutch setup, or at least there's more of those spring washers in there. So I'm going to look into getting those, and I think that should take care of my caster flutter issues, because the casters on this thing are definitely a lot heavier than the stock F3 ones. So anyways, I'll see if I can get those parts and get it taken care of. As far as the Connect module goes, I am going to be wiring up an adapter and monitoring the amount of power, well, standby power draw that thing has when the chair is off, because it definitely uses power. Everyone says that, yeah, it does shut down, it doesn't do anything, but my chair and 2 other people I know have had their chairs go dead inside of 2 weeks when they weren't using them, like when they went on vacation and used another chair, when it was just sitting there powered off. So that module is definitely using power. We were going to be making up an adapter on the live stream before the power went out, and, well, power's been going in and out around here since then, so hopefully I can get this video uploaded. But we're going to do a little more checking on that and figure out what's going on and how much power draw there is and all that stuff. I did get a hold of someone else I know that's very familiar with all of the cell phone carriers and the industry in general, and he was a little bit surprised to see that Tello, was it Tello? Or whatever I said earlier. He was surprised to see that particular carrier being used, and his thoughts were the same as mine, that they've got to be sharing towers with other major providers because they're based in Sweden. Now, they do own their own backhaul to the internet, so whatever towers they're using, they basically have direct lines to a set of servers, or... It makes sense. Permobil's in Sweden, they're running their own servers, they're probably hosted somewhere, but this particular company is set up for a lot of industrial and automation stuff. I think they also work with utilities for remote monitoring of power and water and other facilities and things like that. But I'll be checking into a lot more of that stuff. I find this all fascinating and interesting. But anyways, this video is getting long enough. If you have any questions, put them down below. And I think for now, we're going to call it good. I'll see you guys in a few days.